This event is sponsored by the Register Star and the Columbia County Chamber of Commerce. We will again be using the League of Women Voters format this evening as the town hall debate format, where each candidate will have 3 minutes to give an opening statement, 3 minutes to give a closing statement, and 2 minutes to answer each question for the audience. We ask the audience not to clap, to boo, or to stomp your feet during the debate. If we do have people exhibiting disruptive behavior, we will ask you to leave. We do have some people that are helping us out this evening. When you come in the back door, hopefully you grabbed an index card and a pen, and we do have some question collectors who will be walking around. All you need to do is hold them up. Could my question collectors just raise your hand so people can see you? So please just raise your question, and they will bring it down front. Mary Dempsey, the executive editor from the Register Star, will be screening our questions, making sure that they are able to be answered by both of our candidates in a 2-minute timeline. Also, we have Lori Nander, who she heads up the weekly publications for Columbia Green Media, and she will be our timekeeper. So she will be keeping our candidates on track. They each have, as I said, 2 minutes. At 1:45, she has a yellow sign she will hold up to let them know they have 15 seconds. And if they do reach the 2-minute time, she will hold up the red card. We mutually agreed between the candidates to go in the opposite order from what we had done at the last debate. So starting with opening statements, Tiffany.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for coming out tonight. I would like for everyone in this room to start the debate by thinking of what you want Hudson to be 5 years from now. Ideally, if you could build the city that would work best for you, what does that actually look like? And as we start to contemplate that framework, we then add how it is we get there. It's not about my vision or your vision, it's collectively about our vision, what we want for Hudson. Then we have some near-term goals that we need to accomplish. And I'll talk about those as well. What I plan to do in the first 60 days, what I plan to do in the first year. I hope that tonight you can learn a little bit more about our strengths, about our vision for Hudson, and about what each of us as candidates can potentially bring to you in 2016 and 2017. I hope that you'll ask a lot of questions, and I hope that we're able to answer everything for you sufficiently here tonight. So again, start to think very long term. In 2020, what is it that you want to see in your city? Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm dealing with 2015 and 2016 and hopefully 2017, like I did 2012, 13, and 14. And I'll reiterate what I said in the last 2 debates in case you weren't listening, weren't there, or didn't hear it on the radio. The outcry from the taxpayers in the city of Hudson was to keep taxes low. And I did that. And I continue to do that with a 0% tax increase, less than 1%, and 1.2 respectfully over 3 years. In 2012, when I became mayor, I knew we had to be fiscally responsible, and I knew that we had to be conservative with spending in order to increase our fund balance. In 2012, when I became mayor, our unrestricted fund balance was $1.7 million. Our total fund balance was 2.2. In 2014, it is 3.7, with an unrestricted fund balance 3.3. I knew that our tax-paying residents wanted better services, so I appointed those individuals, mostly Democrats, and I'm a Republican, but it didn't matter to me, mostly Democrats that I knew could be in the position of commissioners to run the departments that we have in the city of Hudson, including a department head named Chief Moore, who provided the city of Hudson and you as residents with better services for your tax dollars. We were able to use our services to fix and continue to fix infrastructure, make the city of Hudson more open to those who want to come here and enjoy what we have, evident by the thousands of people that are here not only during the weekday, but the several thousands of people that come to enjoy our events on the weekend and to enjoy what Hudson has to offer. I submit to you, the city of Hudson has never been better than it is now. And that took place over the course of 3.5 years under my administration. So I'm glad to be here, I'm glad to be in front of you, and I hope that all of you feel the same way, because we don't want to take 2 steps forward to take 2 steps back over the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to open up the program giving both of our candidates a round of applause, thanking them for being here. The first question from the audience, we'll start with Bill. What is your vision for developing the waterfront, starting with actions to be taken next year?
Well, with our waterfront, we've had a lot of conversation. We've had a lot of inquiries from elected officials and the council and residents of what our waterfront will become. It's already become a waterfront that doesn't have oil tanks and doesn't have car crushers. It's already become a waterfront that's conducive to people enjoying the river. It's already become a waterfront that's conducive to all the events that we have. Do we want to develop? Of course we want to develop. Do we want to rush into just any developer that wants to put anything there? I don't want to do that. And I know a lot of residents that I talk to don't want to do that. The future of the city of Hudson's waterfront will become what the residents of the city of Hudson want it to become. And that is, and regardless of where we go in the future with our waterfront, we have to be cognizant of the fact that right now the most developable parcel that we have is the 3 acres with Dunn's building on it. We've had studies done on that building of what that building should become, what we want to see there. We've also, with the Hudson Development Corporation, have paid a lot of money for a study as to what we want our waterfront to look like. But at the same time, we don't want our waterfront and Dunn's building falling into the hands of a private developer who's going to promise, like some developers do, many things for the city of Hudson and our waterfront. Let that fall into private development and then not see that development through a few years down the road. So we continuously work for the development of our waterfront, which I think is fantastic right now. The first thing
that is time.
Thank you.
Thank you. We can maybe hold it up a little higher. Thank you. Same question to you, Tiffany.
Hudson's waterfront and development of that waterfront is really the future of that's where our revenue will be coming from. We're struggling to find additional streams of revenue because right now more than 50% of the revenue that comes into the city is coming from property taxes. So we need alternate sources of revenue. The waterfront is that source of revenue and can be that source of revenue when it's properly developed. We look at the long-term plan. You have Stageworks, which is going to become a hotel, which will have 50 to 55 rooms. You have Basilica, that's already an anchor on the waterfront. You have Dunn's Warehouse, and I believe that the longer-term plan is not necessarily to bring a developer in that will purchase that space, but rather the city will manage and develop it and use it as a multi-purpose space, have it be a conference center, it can be rented out, have a retail space. There are a lot of different ideas that are being floated. The key to all of that right now is access to the waterfront. We don't have that with the closure of the Ferry Street Bridge. My goal in the first year of being in office is to have the Ferry Street Bridge completed by the end of 2016. Spend the first part of the year figuring out where the funding will come from and get the bridge built. Because without that, nothing can happen on the waterfront. We have a safety issue, we have an access issue. We can't rely on crossing over railroad tracks to get there. So my goal in the first year is to get the Ferry Street Bridge developed while we work on thoughtful development of the waterfront for a revenue source.
Time. Next question, starting with you, Tiffany. Hudson has a lot of diversity. In your view, what are the challenges and opportunities this presents? And do you have any ideas how to use this diversity as a strength rather than divide the population?
One of Hudson's primary strengths is its diversity. We look at this actually at the school board level a lot. It's something that we consider to be one of our greatest strengths because we're able to bring together often disparate groups of people toward one common goal. And I believe that's what we can do in Hudson. Up until now, people have really operated and communities have operated in pockets. I would, as mayor, work to bring everyone together so that we can develop goals collectively as a city and as a greater community, rather than worrying about what 50 people think. We'll be thinking about what 6,700 people think needs to be in the city. There are a lot of needs in those different communities. We have people that are struggling to find affordable housing. We have people that are struggling in our education system. Those are issues that we can tackle. In terms of affordable housing, we can start to develop the north side for both affordable housing and for businesses. That starts to bring the community back together. Right now, people don't have a sense of belonging in one community. But when you empower people and you give them adequate housing, and you give them businesses that serve all levels of the community, and you give every single person a voice, suddenly that community starts functioning as a whole. So our diversity is amazing. It's something that we should celebrate every day, and certainly build on to build a stronger community.
It's now evident to me that my opponent has spent too much time away from the city of Hudson in California and Manhattan over the last 10 to 15 years, because if she doesn't think that we're a community together with cultural diversity, she hasn't been here that long. Never before in the city of Hudson have we had a diverse culture like we do, with everyone enjoying everyone else's culture at all our events, during community events, within the city of Hudson, people helping people. And never before have we had the opportunity to create, and she mentions affordable housing, the togetherness that we have with all our cultures in providing everything the city does to those cultures in the way of events, and in the way of helping these individuals that, be it the Bangladesh community or any other community. We've always been welcome and open to those communities. I've mentioned it before, affordable housing keeps coming up with my opponent. We've done our due diligence with affordable housing. But can we do more? We can. And I'll say it again tonight. There's 3 things we need for affordable housing. A community that accepts it, and elected officials on the Common Council that approve the affordable housing that could be available by developers who want to put affordable housing here. And without tax incentives and without incentives like pilots and other incentives, it's difficult and will be difficult to provide further affordable housing. Thank you.
Third question, starting with Bill. What is your plan to increase revenue besides raising taxes?
I've done that over 3.5 years. Our revenue has increased dramatically. We have tax revenue, we have parking revenue, we have revenue streams that certainly the treasurer is cognizant about. We've increased our revenue and our fund balance again from 2.2 million to 3.7 million. I'm a mayor that believes that revenue is created by being conservative with your spending, number one. And it's important. We have to be conservative with our spending, and we've been conservative in the BE, in the Board of Estimate and Apportionment. We've certainly been conservative in estimating what our revenue is going to be for the following year. And when we do that, we see an increase in revenue. We're not out there saying that our revenue is going to be increased dramatically. We don't have these far out visions that every year we're going to create a revenue stream that's going to be unbelievable for that particular year. But our revenue stream and our fund balance, how does our fund balance go from 2.2 million to 3.7 million in 3.5 years' time? And your taxes have been a 0%, 1%, less than 1%, and 1.2%. Thank you.
This is all very interesting, and I'll tell you why. So indeed, when the mayor entered office, the fund balance was $2.2 million. The $3.7 million number that he keeps citing is from December 31st of last year. It's actually dropped $800,000 since then. And I took a look at the additional streams of revenue that have come into the city in 2012, 2013, and 2014. More than 70% of those additional revenues came to us as anomalies. They're a collection of back taxes that were owed at the beginning of 2011 that hit in 2013. The sale of 405 Warren Street, which is also treated as tax revenue because there was a tax lien on the property and it was a tax foreclosure. Those anomalies make up 70% of that increase. The rest of the increase is primarily in the tax increases that you've seen. Despite what the mayor's campaign literature says, taxes were not lowered. When he talks about increases in the last 2 years, those are indeed tax increases. And now we have a healthy fund balance, which is a phenomenal thing. If we had a $3.7 million fund balance at the end of last year, I would have proposed that we take $1 million of that and allocate it to capital reserves. $500,000 for the Ferry Street Bridge and $500,000 for the tower truck that we know we have to purchase for the fire department. So indeed, we are financially healthier than we have been in past years, but we cannot rely on those anomalies to make us healthy going forward.
Next question, starting with Tiffany. Can the candidates discuss how they plan to address the weighted vote issue?
Absolutely.
I'll read it again. Can the candidates discuss how they plan to address the weighted vote issue?
I was definitely a little perplexed by the mayor's recent veto of the weighted vote. And for those of you that aren't following it all that closely, what the Common Council proposed was putting to the voters next November, November 2016, do you think the weighted vote system is fair or not? There was no plan in place for what would replace the weighted vote system. It was simply putting that decision in the hands of the voters. So rather than relying on the Common Council, it would put it to each and every one of you to make that decision. And I think that taking that away from the voters wasn't the greatest idea. Again, all of us are looking for a voice in our local government. And if we're voting on things at the Common Council level, right now we're voting with a weighted vote. So if you're in the 1st Ward or you're in the 4th Ward, both of your aldermen comprise less than 10% of the weighted vote. Whereas if you're in the 5th ward, both of your aldermen comprise about 36% of the weighted vote. It's very skewed. So how is there any equity in that? Rather, it was taking this very important decision, and it was putting that decision in each of your hands and out of city government's hands. Once that decision's made, from there the plan can be formulated. Whether that be equipopulous voting districts, whatever that looks like, then we can all be part of that conversation. The decision should be yours.
And my opponent is absolutely right. The decision should be yours. As I agree with the weighted vote situation coming up for public referendum. First, let me state on the last question that if anybody wants to see the numbers, the true numbers, you can go to openbooknewyork.com and see the balance sheets of the city of Hudson to determine for yourself where we stand and how we've generated revenue. Secondly, when it comes to the weighted vote and the weighted vote resolution that came before me that I vetoed, it did nothing but ask the public whether or not elected officials that you pay, that you vote in, should proceed to remove the weighted vote system without any alternatives for you. That would have happened next year. And then another year would have gone by to put a plan in place, which could have been done now. But this was done without a plan. And that plan that could have been in place now, which would have been in place if you were to say by public referendum that you wanted the council to move to do that, would have then come up on referendum again the following year. And even if you as the public voted yes for it, it wouldn't start until 2 years later. So rather than have the weighted vote changed in 2019, I simply said, we don't need to ask the public as elected officials whether or not we want to provide a plan to do away with the weighted vote system. We have new elected officials, at least 40% of the council, which will be changing with outgoing members of the council. Let's put the plan together and next year have a referendum with choices, because it's all about choices for our taxpayers. Put the plan together, have a multitude of choices for you to decide exactly what you want to replace the weighted vote system with. Thank you.
Next question, starting with Bill. Where are the jobs that you can live on?
I'm sorry.
Where are the jobs that you can live on?
Where are the jobs that you can live on? Well, we're a community of small business. I told you before that the city of Hudson and Columbia County, the backbone of the county now in economics is small business. 4 huge employers that we have that I believe my opponent and her supporters would like to see taxed: Hudson Correction Facility, the hospital, one of the biggest employers in the city of Hudson and Columbia County, the Fireman's Home, and the school district employ many people here in the city of Hudson. And I mentioned in the last debate, almost as an outcry to those small businesses that employ many individuals, many who don't reside in the city of Hudson, to take a step back and look at our cultural diversity that we spoke about earlier. Look in the Bangladesh community, look in the African American community, and look at our community as a whole to start hiring from within the city of Hudson. As the city of Hudson does, in most cases, if we can, throughout our departments. I think it's important that the small business that fuels our economy here in the city of Hudson starts believing that we have competent people here, which I know we do, to work in your restaurants, to work in your stores, and to work throughout the business district with fair wages. And I truly believe that. The day of industry, I believe, for now anyway, is over in the city of Hudson, where the 150 and 200 employment jobs, will take place, and we're dependent on our backbone with small business to hire within the city.
That is time.
Thank you.
Not that I want to be reactive, but I am going to take one moment to challenge the mayor to actually cite any time in this entire campaign that I have said that I want the huge employers of Hudson, the hospital, the fireman's home to be taxed. That's patently false, so I'll call you on that. Moving on from there, our small business community is indeed the backbone of Hudson. And further development of that community is essential to Hudson's future. For those of you who weren't here or weren't at the last debate 2 weeks ago, I'll share with you that I had a business roundtable about a month and a half ago. I had a room full of 35 business owners and asked everyone in the room, when has the mayor, during his term, been in your place of business? Raise your hand, anyone. Not one hand went up. So if indeed we're trying to work collaboratively with the business community to encourage them to hire one way or another, locally or otherwise, we have to have a conversation with them. We have to have a back and forth dialogue with them. And that's simply not happening right now. I know that the HDC is doing some really great work working with the Business Coalition here in Hudson. That's wonderful. We can certainly expand on that. As more businesses come into Hudson, we'll be generating new opportunities, new job opportunities for people. The city needs to get behind training opportunities, mentorship opportunities, apprenticeship opportunities. All of these things will create positions with living wages and give people a sense of ownership and belonging in the community.
Okay, next question, perhaps you started to touch on these things, but the next question from the audience is, what specifically will you do to assist the business community in Hudson?
So
It's to Tiffany.
Specifically, I would work in a much more collaborative sense with the business community. I'm looking to meet with business owners as collectively as a whole, quarterly, so we can talk about what's working for them, what's not working for them, what can the city of Hudson do to better support them. I would also be very active as a member of the board of the Hudson Development Corporation, because they're doing a tremendous amount of work trying to market Hudson to new businesses and helping existing businesses be successful. That's a really critical role. When I looked back through the HDC's meeting minutes over the last year, something that I think is pretty key to Hudson's future development and our economic development, I discovered that the mayor of the 7 meetings this year was absent for 4 of them. I would promise you that as mayor, I would attend those meetings and work very collaboratively with the HTC and with the existing business coalitions to market Hudson, to understand what businesses need, and to provide an infrastructure upon which they're built and that allows them to be successful going forward.
First of all, I've met with a lot of businesses over my 3.5 years. I don't run, nor does the mayor run a coalition at City Hall of businesses. There is a business coalition. And over the last 3.5 years, they've done a phenomenal job in providing what we have on Warren Street. No mayor that I know of has been outside City Hall more than me. I don't know what businesses my opponent refers to when she says that they said they haven't seen me. But the mayor has a lot of responsibilities as the chief executive officer of the city. And in some cases, I wish I could go to work every day and remain in the business district, providing all my time and energy to the businesses that exist, when I know they can do that and have done that for themselves. But being mayor, you cannot have tunnel vision on the business district alone. There are 6,700 residents in the city of Hudson. They all need a mayor. Our diverse culture and the people that live within those cultures, they need to see a mayor, as does everyone else, and the open door policy that I've had for people to come to City Hall and to see me as they've done. If you think the business district under my leadership is not flourishing, and if you think it is, and you don't think I've been there, maybe you don't want me there, because I think you're doing a fantastic job. But I've been there, and I've spoken to business people. Maybe I haven't been to every store, knocking on the doors and talking to each individual business person. But nobody's been out in the public more than I as mayor.
That is time. Next question, starting with Bill. Hudson winters are tough on Warren Street retailers. Will the city work to support local businesses by improving snow removal?
I'd like to think that our snow removal policy is good, and I've taken some steps to make that better, but I would always like to enhance our snow removal abilities more than what we've done. The business district in the code, I work for the executive branch. Sometimes I think my opponent mixes up the executive and legislative branches of government. The legislative branch makes the laws. In our Hudson City Code, we have laws pertaining to how snow is removed. All the mayor does is execute those laws. I've provided big diamond vision machines in 3 locations of the city to inform residents of snow removal. I contacted the county emergency management in Tom Lanphier to encourage, and most residents are doing this, to register on their site for robocall. So whenever the mayor calls for snow emergency, you know the details of that snow emergency. We put a sheet indicating what the snow emergency is in the October water bill that goes to everyone in the city of Hudson. In the business district, the law states that businesses on Warren Street or buildings on Warren Street have 12 hours to clear their sidewalks of snow. The rest of the city has 24. I would support any legislation coming from the Common Council that would indicate doing otherwise. But until such time, I'm left with enforcing the laws that are on the Hudson City Code book based on what the legislative branch of government has provided long before I became mayor.
Thank you. So in summary, the answer is the mayor is not going to make any changes to the snow removal policies or start any sort of an initiative to get legislation changed with the Common Council in the City Code to improve snow removal, because that's not what the executive branch of city government does.
That would be correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood. So what I as mayor would do would be to actually start that initiative and to work collaboratively with the Common Council to make sure that there's a plan in place and laws in place that work for everyone. The mayor talked about, we never talked about effects on business, which I believe is the original question, about how everyone is notified on the water bill. If you're a renter, you don't get a water bill. So you don't actually get that notice. So you're not sure. If you have a snow emergency, you're listening to Cat 93.5, or maybe going to the city's website, which may have information on it that contradicts what you might get if you call into the police department to find out what the rules are. These are all problematic. If you're someone coming into Hudson to spend money at one of the businesses and you're looking to park your car on the street, it's a big problem because you have absolutely no idea that there's a snow emergency. All of a sudden, there's chaos, there's nowhere to park, or you're being towed. This affects people coming to town, and this affects local businesses. If we're trying to work collaboratively with business owners, don't we want to make that much simpler for people? It's hard for us as residents. So let's take the initiative. I argue that the executive branch can indeed take that initiative and work with the Common Council and DPW to make it happen.
That is time. Thank you. Next question, starting with Tiffany. Do you feel that shutting down Warren Street for parades on weekends benefits businesses that are there and benefits the city at large? Do you feel, okay, I'll read it again. Do you feel that shutting down Warren Street for parades on weekends benefits the businesses that are there and benefits the city at large? Starting with Tiffany.
Do I think that parades benefit business? In some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. However, I think that parades are part of the fabric of who we are as a community. They're tradition. They belong on our main street. They belong on Warren Street. People love them. People come from all over to go to the Flag Day Parade, to go to the Pride Parade. These are important events that bring us together as a community. What's happened in recent years is that there's been some issues in terms of business owners being notified in advance or consulted. How will this affect you as a business owner? How will this affect your revenue? Is it on a major revenue weekend? If you're looking year over year and you look to this weekend last year, how will this impact your business? Will you be able to pay your bills this month? It's a big concern. What the city can do is get out in front of it. And certainly that happened with the mass gathering permits, the extended lead time on that gives businesses more time to plan. But again, it's more about building not only a community as a whole, but building up the business community and communication with the business community so that we can accomplish things like having a parade without it being a giant uproar. Because I don't think anyone in this room wants to do away with any parade. I know I don't. It's great. Our kids love it. We all love it. We all want it here. Businesses will work with you to find out ways to lessen the impact and to make sure that you're notified as much in advance as possible so that you can decide for yourselves how to best structure that weekend to maximize your profits that weekend.
Just a side note on the last question, I would ask for my opponent, should she become mayor, to collaborate with the rest of the city also on the snow emergency and not just the business district. And I'm very cognizant of the business district when it comes to snow emergencies. But we have other residents, 6,700 of them throughout the city of Hudson, that should be invited to the table as well. When it comes to parades, I think I'm on record saying that I believe parades should stay on Warren Street. If there's an issue from any businesses that the parades are causing a lack of revenue for the businesses or business, I have not received any calls or information on that. Now, with that said, do I believe that parades that everyone knows about a year in advance, like Flag Day, the Pride Day Parade, and these other larger parades and events, cause for street closure and may affect some businesses? That could be, and I've never denied that. I think the bigger picture, though, is the mass gathering permits for events outside of veterans who want to show their pride and their service, marching down the street for Veterans Day or Memorial Day. We have to look at mass gathering permits for those other events that come in throughout the year, where at times we have street closures. There is a process for that. I vetoed that process because there was nothing wrong with the initial mass gathering permit. But yet it was sent through for organizers to have 120, outside of 120 days, to provide for a mass gathering permit so that people in our community who want to have events that they know about a month or two in advance can't have them. That's the system that we need to be a little more creative in getting the information out to the business owners.
Time. Next question, starting with Bill. What will you do to improve public transportation in Hudson?
We've talked about this before. Public transportation, we all know that we had a minibus years ago. We We had a couple of them, thanks to previous administrations that would drive people around the city of Hudson. We now, the county contracts with a bus system that picks our residents up, brings them out to the shopping centers, brings them back. Would I like to see future public transportation in the city of Hudson? Absolutely. Would I like to see it with the $195,000 it was costing the city taxpayers every year because we were losing that amount of money? No. Unless you want tax increases, and then we can do that. One of the things that I've spoken to members of the council about, and Rob Perry, the superintendent of DPW, who used to maintain these buses, was the fact that there are buses out there that run on solar. We've considered possibly even purchasing those. With the fund balance that has increased as much as it has, and I agree with my opponent, you'll hear a little bit of this later in my closing about a capital reserve fund. We've been cognizant of these things by creating the amount of revenue and creating the amount of enhanced funding that we now have that's unrestricted for the purpose of considering these buses and other forms of transportation. When it comes to transportation from the city of Hudson to the college, I met with the president. The president said that, and I think I can quote him, that they'll no longer participate because when they did, the buses were coming here and nobody was available. After a while, kids used to start carpooling with other kids that they met at the college. When they went to pick them up at these designated spots, there was nobody there. It was not cost effective for the college to do it as well.
Time.
Transportation is something that I've heard a lot about in my campaign. In particular, the people that I've heard the most from are the most vulnerable members of our community. Those were the people that were impacted when we did away with our city bus service. So I've done some digging to figure out what the costs are and exactly how we came to doing away with the bus service. I found out that the trolley buses that we had couldn't actually leave city limits because of the type of bus that it was. If we wanted to offer a comprehensive service to these most vulnerable people in our community, as well as everyone in the community, we can make that work. We do have a healthy fund balance. We have the money to pay for the buses. Let's make it a priority. I would propose that we would provide an in-city bus service that would travel just to points in the city, that we would have bus service that would be worked in collaboration with the county to travel to Greenport so that people can shop at the grocery stores and access services there that they need, and work with the county to secure a bus that goes back and forth to Columbia Green. While the president of Columbia Green may feel that it's not important, or that those 5 people that rode the bus to Columbia Green were not important enough to keep the bus service, those 5 people will tell you that it is important. Hudson Forward, which is a group, a citizens action group that I helped found, recognized that void and now provides a rideshare service to Columbia Green to fill that void. But overall, we're financially healthier. Let's make that a priority for next year and get buses back in the city of Hudson.
Next question, starting with Tiffany. What needs to be done to get the lodging tax approved?
The lodging tax has been approved at the city level, as I understand it. It has not yet been approved at the state level. Similar to our LWRP, actually. What needs to happen is that we have to lobby the state to make sure that that gets approved. If that's an additional source of revenue that we're looking to bring into Hudson, if we think that's valuable and we want to make that a priority, we have to work very closely with our state representatives to make that happen. Outside of that, there's not a lot we can do. It's simply time at this point for the state to approve that plan.
When I first heard about the concept of this luxury tax for bed and breakfasts for somebody who doesn't reach out to businesses, I think I made a phone call to every one of them. Some called me back, some didn't, because I wanted to get their perspective of how this tax was going to affect their businesses. I didn't necessarily disagree with it, but I didn't necessarily agree with it at that particular time. After hearing some of the bed and breakfasts that had called me and had informed me that they didn't have a problem with it, didn't think that it would affect their business, I supported the idea. Not only from the standpoint of revenue, obviously, for the city, because that, of course, at the end of the day, is what I think John Friedman, the alderman from the 3rd Ward, was thinking of. Maybe he was cognizant of the businesses, but I wasn't just going to sign off on something without hearing from the businesses and whether or not it would affect people wanting to stay there. I know these taxes are used in other lodging places throughout New York State. I don't think it's a bad idea for those who have these businesses, put a lot of time into their businesses, have put a lot of money into their businesses, and certainly from a city standpoint where these lodges are full every weekend, you can't get a room. It makes sense, and I did not support that, but I didn't just sign off because somebody was telling me that it was good. I did my own research, and at the end of the day, I support the lodging tax at the bed and breakfast.
Okay, we have 2 more questions from the audience. Do you feel there are or should be limits to a mayor's ability to veto resolutions passed by the Common Council? Or do you feel the mayor has a kind of ultimate weighted vote?
Can you read that one more time?
Sure, it's a long sentence.
I'm hearing better if I walk away.
Do you feel there are or should be limits to a mayor's ability to veto resolutions passed by the Common Council? Or do you feel the mayor has a kind of ultimate weighted vote?
It is our system of government, folks. It is our way of checks and balances in government. Do I feel that I should be able to sell land, purchase things without council approval, handcuff the council, the legislative branch of government, be king with king powers? Absolutely not. What are we talking about here? Really, what are we talking about? Collectively, people, and I know that you have investments here, and I know you may like someone because their face is prettier than the other, or they're on the Republican or Democratic side. We need to work together, and that's what government has done in the city of Hudson. And no, I don't think that the mayor's veto powers should be limited. No more than I think I should go to a legislative branch of government, a common council meeting, and start dictating to those elected officials that you voted in to that branch of government to do the things that I want them to do. That's the checks and balances of government. That's what makes this city great. It's what makes this county great. It's what makes America great. Because we have those checks and balances. So absolutely not. I mean, I don't even know if I'm trying to understand that question, but to limit the executive powers of a chief executive officer who feels something is wrong or something isn't good for the residents that he oversees from the executive branch and limit his powers? Absolutely not.
It's a question that really, to me, leads to another question, and that is, why have there been so many mayoral vetoes while the mayor's been in office? And in my opinion, the reason is that the mayor has a very adversarial relationship with the Common Council. The overall picture that we see from this is very dysfunctional. So we have a situation where things are being passed at the Common Council level that many of us can pretty easily predict there's a veto coming for this. if the mayor is able to work more closely, more openly, more collaboratively with the city government, the city's then able to get a lot more done. We don't need to be mired down in vetoes and overrides at the common council level. To me, it really seems like a tremendous waste of time and energy and effort. Rather, as mayor, my goal would be to form a very productive working relationship with the common council so that mayoral vetoes would be extremely rare and we'd all be on the same page in terms of what Hudson needs and how we get there.
Final question from the audience this evening. What will you do to make Hudson more friendly for the disabled? Yes, what will you do to make Hudson more friendly for the disabled?
This one's mine.
I'm sorry.
Okay. There are multiple things that I would do to make the city more friendly for the disabled. First of all, we can tie back to transportation, which I just talked about. I would make sure that we get a city bus up and running so that everyone in the community, including the disabled, have access to transportation and are able to get where they need to go. I would work on the sidewalk problem, which is something that we've talked a lot about in the recent months. Many of our sidewalks are not ADA compliant. They are impassable if you're in a wheelchair or using a walker or on a bike. That we can fix by having a comprehensive plan to fixing the sidewalks. And to reiterate what I said 2 weeks ago, one of the first things I would do in regard to sidewalks is to form a task force to look at the city overall and start to build out a plan of repairing those sidewalks, regardless of how it's written in the city charter and who's responsible. Ultimately, the sidewalks need to be fixed, period. I would also look at accessibility to public meetings. I was really stunned to learn that if I'm disabled, if I'm in a wheelchair and I need to go to a common council meeting, there is absolutely no way for me to access City Hall. That's appalling to me. As an American, as someone who likes to participate in the democratic process, the fact that if I am in a wheelchair, I cannot access City Hall blows me away and makes me feel like I'm not a part of the community. I would start to unfold that and look at how we can offer access to everyone, to City Hall, to the sidewalks, to transportation, and to all of Hudson.
I've dealt with a lot of handicapped individuals coming to City Hall, and they've never had a problem with my alleged inability to provide a handicap space for them. The money that would need to be spent, and I just hope you understand the process, the money that would need to be spent to do that has to be approved by the legislative branch of government. However, we do have handicapped individuals that come to City Hall, and we accommodate them the best we can when we have to. But what I would do in the future to accommodate handicap throughout the city, I can tell you that we've put a lot more handicap parking spots throughout the city of Hudson. We also are waiting on a grant. Our great grant writer, Chessie, out here in the middle of the audience, has applied for a grant for the Promenade Hill Park and providing for a handicap ramp for the handicapped there. Handicapped accessible buildings, I think, are a must. We have to find a way to generate those necessities through good fiscal planning. And when it comes to the sidewalks that my opponent has mentioned in the last 3 debates, in regards to, as far as I'm concerned, not only those who are dealing with a handicap, but the general public, the Hudson City Code, once again, states it is the responsibility of the building owner to replace the sidewalks. Now, until such time as maybe this new council coming in, which, if I'm elected, I hope will have a better working relationship with the 40 to 50% of new council members coming in. They can change the language of the law to indicate that the city of Hudson is responsible to assist those building owners. But until then, I can't arbitrarily.
That is timely. Thank you. Thank you to both of our candidates. Can we give them both a round of applause?